I spent my 4th of July debating Republican talking points about Trump's big, beautiful bill. Watch, learn the real facts, and let me know how I did.
All right, Kaivan, I apologize for mispronouncing your name, and also happy holidays to you, my friend. But this is no way a health care bill, but it will make some of the biggest health policy changes since Obamacare. There are $1 trillion in cuts, and more than 12 million Americans could lose their insurance. What do you see being the Republicans' argument if challenged by constituents?
Well, I think you're absolutely right to say this is in no way a healthcare bill. It's just the opposite. And I think we're going to see Republicans do what they do best, which is blatantly lie about this. And we've seen a little bit of it. We've seen congressmen like Keith Self from Texas tweet 24 hours before voting for the bill that it was morally and fiscally bankrupt, and then going and voting for it. We've seen, Derek Van Orden delete tweets admitting what is in this bill. So, once again, they're going to say something to the public that's not true and then go do the dirty work on behalf of their billionaires. And I think people are very tired of this. We all just watched that Bezos wedding, right? A gaudy, ostentatious affair. And to think that anyone in the country thinks we need to take away school lunch from 18 million kids, healthcare from 17 million Americans to make sure that Jeff Bezos can set more money on fire, I don't think is going to be a compelling message.
All right, so House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, we all saw it. He held a marathon speech for nearly 9 hours yesterday to delay voting on this bill. Here's what he said. In part, obviously, we're not going to play the 9 hours.
The justification for all of the cuts that will hurt everyday Americans is to provide massive tax breaks for billionaires. The American people will not get over it, but they will get even next November.
Okay, so what do you make of what he said about next year's elections, Denise?
Well, I cannot wait for next year's elections because, what's really important is really performance results, not just a bunch of rehashed talking points, fear mongering. Look, what I care about as a lawyer are facts. And let me just also say that the tax rate for the wealthiest Americans stayed at 37%. So that lie about, helping the wealthiest Americans, it's complete nonsense. You can just look it up yourself.
All right, Kaivan, we're running out of time. Quick response here.
I'm a lawyer too, so I know that lawyers can twist the facts and be pretty dishonest with them. The truth is, this was set to expire, right? Those crazy tax breaks they delivered for billionaires in Trump's first term were going to expire. So what Denise is saying is absolutely untrue. And the reality is, this is a tax cut for the top 0.1% of earners, people making over $3 million a year, when the real home net income for the rest of Americans, the bottom 60%, is going to go down because of this bill. Today, on July 4th, beef prices are at a record high, the highest since 1980 under Donald Trump. And now Americans are going to have to suffer even more. It's actually more expensive to celebrate America today. And I'll tell you, I'm 31. What this really does is it mortgages the future of my generation and the ones to come, who are going to have to pay off the $4 trillion that Donald Trump, the oldest president, inaugurated, who won't be around when the bill comes due, let's be honest, and Mitch McConnell won't be around when the bill comes due. It's going to fall on us. It's going to fall on those legislators' grandkids, and they should be ashamed of it.
One of the things I love about the split screen, you got Kaivan talking, and then you got Denise smiling. It's great TV. Kaivan, DNC Chairman Ken Martin, he's been very open, to say the least, about how his family is depending on Medicaid and SNAP. During his childhood, he released a statement saying this. I'm going to throw it up here. This massive scheme to steal from working families, children, and seniors will devastate communities in blue and red states alike. Had this bill passed when I was growing up, I would not be here today. How can Democrats effectively, appeal to red states or red state voters who depend on Medicaid and then other social safety net programs in 2026?
Well, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris provided Wi-Fi to rural Trump voters, and Donald Trump is taking away hospital access from those same voters. Hundreds of rural hospitals will close because of this bill. And just to let you know how big and bad this bill is for Trump and Republicans in midterms, why is he signing it at 5 o'clock on a holiday weekend, bringing in the military, having all this distraction, 500 things going on? It's a news dump because it's wildly unpopular. Only 38% of Fox News voters like this bill. That tells you something.
Denise, I hear you
oh
laughing.
my goodness,
I hear you laughing.
I
Go
love
ahead.
it. I love it. This is the biggest birthday gift we could ever give to Americans.
Listen to what Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris said about how the White House got the group to yes, and then I'll get your response on the other side.
And we were going to oppose the bill. I was going to vote no for the. Without these agreements we came through last night, I was a hard no on this bill. These agreements are significant. It'll become obvious over the next few months how we've got the administration to move in a direction that mitigates a lot of the issues with the Senate bill.
All right, so I was watching my colleague, Joe Khalil, on the steps of Capitol Hill talking to Chip Reed, also, on that same Freedom Caucus. He asked him what made you switch from no to yes, and he didn't really have honestly, he didn't have a concrete answer. Has the House Freedom Caucus lost some of its bite?
I sure hope so. The House Freedom Caucus is to what most of us Republicans as what the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is to them today.
I have a little hypothesis. There's been some great reporting on Don Bacon retiring from Congress, and one of the main reasons is because of the vile and vicious threats against him and his family from Trump supporters and MAGA during that speaker race a couple years ago, so much so that his wife was sleeping with a gun next to her in bed. And so when they can't tell you why they changed their vote and they can't articulate it, you really do have to ask questions and wonder why, right? This is Republicans saying all this. These are not Democrats telling these stories and running out of our government because they're afraid and their families are afraid. So I think it's very suspicious, and of course it merits more investigation.
I think Republicans need to double down and point Americans to the bill, to read the bill, and see what it says on pages 365 and 366 about who gets to keep and who doesn't get to keep their Medicaid benefits. And if Democrats want to be the party that stands on the side of people who stand against the American dream, which is, contributing to your own personal responsibility for caring for your health care, Republicans are going to stand on we're preserving Medicaid for those who actually need it and not for illegal immigrants and those who are able-bodied, not caring for dependents, who should be required to do something productive with their life.
But Kaivan, Senator Tillis warned President Trump, that the Medicaid cuts in this legislation would cost Republicans the House majority in 2026. What do Democrats need to do to make that prediction a reality? Make it not just, a prediction, but actually make it come true.
I can guarantee you they're not going to punt and tell voters they have to read several hundred pages of a bill. They're going to do much more effective messaging and connect the real world harms that these voters are going to be experiencing because of these brutal cuts to this bill. And I would say not only 2026 midterms are going to be effective, but I think effectively the 2028 primary for Republicans begins today, because you have people like Tucker Carlson who are very unhappy with Trump for bombing Iran. And now he's adding $4 trillion to the debt. He's sounding a lot like what Republicans say they don't like about Democrats. And you're going to see MAGA fractured over this, even with Republicans, right? How deeply unpopular, you're giving an example, but there's so many other Republicans that spoke out about how horrible this bill was, and yet they forced it through anyway. So I think that and his foreign affairs mishaps are really going to define who leads this party. And I think it's a huge blow to J.D. Vance that he has to own this bill.
Kaivan, I'm going to come back to you with this one too, man. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries obviously made a lot of headlines yesterday, and other Democrats have said people will die because of the Medicaid reforms in this mega bill. Is that an effective argument, or do Democrats risk, trying to scare people or sounding like they're alarmists?
Well, I got to say, a lot of the facts here that we've been debating, Democrats are citing facts from the Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan. These are realities, right? When you take away health care from millions of people, they won't have access to health care, and therefore some people will die. Of course, that's true. When you shut down hundreds of hospitals across rural America, people won't have access to the treatments they need, and of course, people will die. When you take away access to life-saving care at Planned Parenthood, which this bill also does defund Planned Parenthood, women die. We've seen this over and over again.
Two moderate Republicans, Senator Tom Tillis and Congressman Don Bacon, both announced that they won't seek re-election. What does the White House need to do to keep the party united moving forward?
Well, I just want to go back and quickly say we're not asking anyone to read the whole bill unless you want to, but if you did, I can understand why
Nearly
Kaivan and the
1,000
Democrats
pages.
don't
How much
want
do they
you
want to? How much do you think they want
because
to read?
you've got to go look and you have to trust but verify. I'm a Reagan person. Here's, in regards to keeping unity, President Trump has had no problems whatsoever keeping the party unified. If you have a couple of defectors, that's incredible. That's absolutely remarkable. I mean, politically, nobody is saying that he's not in charge of whipping Republicans in line. So I think we should end up caucusing with some Democrats that actually are more concerned about the Mamdani wing of the party and the socialist agenda that's emerging and growing stronger on the Democratic side. And again, 60% of Democrats polled said they would prefer a more moderate tone in the Republican Party. So I think President Trump's going to do exactly what he did to get the blue wall and win it so well for the working class. And that is to let's reach out to Senator Fetterman. Let's reach out to some of those moderate Democrats and say, look, we want to work with you. Let's not be at odds. Let's work together for most Americans. And that's what we're going to see moving forward.
I got to get in here
President Trump
to say,
extended the invitation for Democrats to be there today to celebrate this incredible birthday gift.
After this bill passed, Donald Trump went and said he hates Democrats. I mean, a statement like that is so unproductive and unhelpful. And by the way, for all the pundits and all the journalists that basically blame the downfall of American democracy on Hillary Clinton saying basket of deplorables in 2016, I have not seen the same amount of reaction and coverage to that vile statement from the sitting president.
I will react and say it was horrible. I agree. I think it's horrible. I don't think anyone should hate anybody.
Why do you think he's
we
gonna
should
reach across the
embrace
aisle?
and work together. Because he just did. He offered them an opportunity to be there. Well, he just offered them an invitation.
Hate is a strong word. All right, Kaivan, so this new budget bill.
I think actions are more powerful than words.
Fair enough. The new budget bill, let's talk about this here, because, I mean, nearly 1,000 pages. But the budget bill does extend the 2017 tax cuts, eliminate some taxes on tipped wages, so no tax on tips. It also has a tax reduction for seniors. So Democrats, is that something to be careful about, attacking those parts of the bill? Seniors would, benefit from that. What do you think?
Not really. I think Democrats have to treat the voters as, able to maybe not read 1,000 pages of a bill, but be smart enough to weigh the benefits and the costs, right? So are they getting, maybe a couple $100s in a little benefit, but then losing access to their health care, losing access to groceries? I mean, the trade-offs in what they're really getting in net income go down for the bottom 60% of Americans. And again, that's not a Democratic talking point. That's the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office saying that. So I think making sure people really understand the trade-offs and economics there will be really important.
So you can say whatever you want about why you don't want people to read it. I don't have that elitist perspective that people can't read. I think people can absolutely read, and when they do, I think Democrats don't want them to, because they don't want them to see what's actually in the bill. If you say $6,000 bonus senior tax credit isn't helping seniors, I don't really know what to tell you. I mean, read the freaking bill.
It's not elitism to assume that most Americans don't have 60 hours to read a 1,000-page bill.
That's
just read that part. I mean, come on, that's on you.
Okay. That's total BS. Kaivan, I'm glad you picked up on that. All right. Denise, I do want to ask you this. In addition to the Medicaid reforms, the legislation is going to make electric vehicles more expensive, put new limits on student loan borrowers. Is that something you think Americans, could be surprised when they find out all the things? And we were just talking about this. I mean, it is nearly 1,000 pages. But are they going to hate the fact that when they find that out and that it's in this bill?
I'm sure a lot of Californians, like my fiance who has a Tesla, will probably hate that the EV tax credit that I worked on for Elon Musk as a Tesla lobbyist and a lawyer for him in 2008 is actually going away. But you know what? Owning an EV is a privilege, not a right. And I don't think people should be subsidized. You talk about billionaire subsidies. Elon Musk has gotten $38 billion in federal subsidies. So no, I don't think that that's something that actually benefits most Americans and most Americans will care about.
All right, Denise, Kaivan, I appreciate both of you so much. Thanks for being here. And thanks for smiling, too. I love the smiles on a 4th of July.
Love being on with Denise.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thanks for the fireworks. All right.